The police are screaming, what's happened in the last 10 years with young people? They become dangerous on our streets. Out of control. Lawcracker! Welcome to Lawcracker. We take what's going on in the law and we break it down. Okay, so today we're going to talk about knife crime. There's been a worrying documented explosion in knife crime attacks, 93% over 5 years. There have been some horrific publicised deaths. This is a problem that appears to be getting out of control. Well, the police are screaming that they don't have enough bodies on the streets, and that is a major cause of this. But does more police on the streets equal a reduction in knife crime? Well, it's quite a bold suggestion, that, isn't it? Probably implies that there can be enough police at all times that people feel a real sense that they can't commit crime. Increased sentences have also been talked about, but actually if you look at the stats, sentences over the last 10 years have gone up, and so's knife crime. So that doesn't seem to be the answer, and that probably gives these kids, mostly kids, more credit for an ability to think about the consequences of their actions than they have. There's also been a lot of talk about stop and search powers, and that basically means at the moment the police have to have reasonable suspicion, like a good reason to stop you and to search you for a knife, you know, with a couple of exceptions. They're talking about enlarging that, but the data suggests that stop and search are actually drivers of young people into the gang culture because they feel more alienated. These are kids that may just be on the peripheries of society to some extent, and they're probably trying to work out, you know, is formal society something that I can consider myself part of? And then a police officer, you know, probably the strongest symbol of formal society, without justification, stops and searches them. Now, the police officer will think, okay, well, that was good. There was no knife there. That's that dealt with. But each time a stop and search happens like that, without success, there's a risk that irreparable damage is done to that young person's view of society. Stop and search is actually counterproductive. About the only sensible thing that's come out of politicians on all of this in recent months, in fact the last couple of years, is the offensive weapons bill that finally addresses things like zombie knives and acid, and not just the people who are buying them, but the people who are selling them, making sure those people go to prison. But if for the most part you can't use the law, you can't use policing, you can't use, you know, security measures to deal with this problem that is growing at a huge rate. You look at the root and the reason. What's happened in the last 10 years with young people that might have led to this? Youth work cut as a result of austerity. The EMA, enabling kids to go to college, just 30 quid a week, but giving them a sense of the fact that they had a future. Sure Start, targeting young kids and families who were at risk. All of these things removed essentially from our society. Add to that the fact that youth poverty is probably at levels that it hasn't been since the 1970s recession. Isn't this a predictable problem? If you ignore your children, if you push them to one side and say they don't matter, and then 5 years later, 10 years later, they become dangerous on our streets, who is the responsibility with? Is it with them, is it with the police, or is it to do with politicians who in the first place almost consciously ignored them, and in doing so created this problem as sure as if they intended to in the first place? More police, more laws is not how you deal with a social problem. The great thing is here, because it's a social problem that was created by politicians, it can be dealt with by them. This was the Lawcracker. Tell me what you think. Like, share, all that stuff. And subscribe, if you can subscribe. I don't know if you can subscribe, but soon find out. Thank you. Lawcracker.